What's up, Taiwan? I'm Jaime Ocon with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. A busy week in San Francisco for the APEC Leaders Summit has come to a close, and with several high-level meetings between the 21 member economies, one contentious member may be coming out with the most wins. Joyce Sung reports.
After a week packed with meetings and galas, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit is wrapping up here in San Francisco. Leaders from 21 economies have come to discuss how to boost trade and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region, despite their political differences. There were many roundtable talks, but also separate one-on-one meetings on the sidelines. The group's members leveraging the convenient, valuable chance to strengthen and smoothen some tenser bilateral relationships.
APEC is not what it used to be. It used to be a more trade liberalization, but about business. It's been a little bit more security and now a lot more about geopolitics, geoeconomics. But nevertheless, it's better to have APEC than not.
This year's APEC summit has been particularly fruitful for polarizing Chinese President Xi Jinping, who's come to the U.S. for the first time in 6 years. His biggest win, a rare in-person meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden and their agreement to resume critical military-to-military communications. The optics of this are significant. The two superpowers have been locked in stiff defense and technology competition, as the U.S. economy is in recovery and China's is struggling, with a property value crisis and low consumer confidence.
China's economy is not what it was, say, a year ago. China has suggested that economics are much, much more important than playing politics.
Which is why China seems to have struck a more conciliatory tone with its rival, and also sought to show it's willing to create a safe business environment in sit-downs with Japan, Mexico, Fiji, and Peru. Xi also took time this trip to meet with American captains of industry, like Apple CEO Tim Cook and Tesla CEO Elon Musk.
You know, for China, I think they're learning this lesson is that you can attract foreign investment, but you have to maintain foreign investment. You can't just raid businesses unexpectedly. It has to be an equal landscape.
But whether Xi's show of friendliness this time or so-called charm offensive is a short-term tactic to gain strategic support is the question. Several APEC leaders have wielded their influence to urge Xi to play by the rules of global trade and international order. And though they've said they've made progress, several issues still remain unresolved, like Taiwan. The self-ruled nation, which Beijing claims as its own, is a flashpoint that will soon be tested as Taiwan heads to the polls in less than 2 months for a pivotal presidential election. But at least here at the APEC summit, some leaders may have simmered down strained ties for the time being, affirming that the week's conference has been one of fruitful dialogue and progress. Justin Wu and Joyce Sun in San Francisco for TaiwanPlus.
A coalition deal between two of Taiwan's presidential candidates has collapsed just 3 days after it was signed. It's a blow for the opposition's chances of winning the January election and a boost for Taiwan's ruling party. Stash Butler reports.
The deal is off. Taiwan's two leading opposition candidates for president in January's election will not work together as planned. That's after one of them, Ko Wen-je, the dark horse former mayor of Taipei, pulled out of the agreement that he signed just 3 days ago. Now, under that agreement, the party, Ke's party, the Taiwan People's Party, and the opposition Kuomintang or KMT agreed to use opinion polls to decide which of their two candidates should be president and which should be vice president. Now, Ke says he's pulling out of the deal because the two sides couldn't reach an agreement on how to calculate the margin of error for those polls. The KMT says its method of calculation was correct. Ke says his method has more scientific basis. Here's what he and his team had to say.
在野整合，我觉得还是必要的。我们在想办法再整合一下，找出一组最强的候选人，一下来赢得选举，这才是我们的目标。那所以，我们还是期望说可以跟国民党继续协商的，但是不要要求我们让6%，然后叫我们自己弃械投降。
Now, the failure of this deal is seen as a big victory for the ruling party candidate, current Vice President Lai Ching-te of the DPP, or Democratic Progressive Party, and his chances of succeeding the current president Tsai Ing-wen. Now, Lai has been leading in the polls, but those same polls also suggested he'd lose to a united opposition. Now, election day is on January 13th. It's 56 days away, or precisely 8 weeks. But it's actually only 5 days away until the deadline comes for the registration of presidential candidates. Now, Ke, Ko-en-je, and the KMT say that a deal on a presidential coalition between their two parties can still be reached, but time is running out for them to agree it. Luffy Li and Stash Butler in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Navy is starting construction of a prototype light warship focused on air defense. At a ceremony in southern Taiwan on Friday, President Tsai Ing-wen said the new warship is part of an effort to modernize the military. Taiwan often faces military pressure from China, which operates its own warships and fighter jets near the country. Tsai said the new lighter frigate would boost the military's ability to respond to threats.
我们持续迈向国防现代化，轻型巡防舰的吨位小，建造期程短，可让我们海军在执行任务的时候减少主战舰的耗损，在兵力运用上也更具有弹性。
Japan is drilling simulated beach landings this weekend as part of a countrywide military exercise. The drills are part of 11 days of exercises held around Japan aimed at prepping the country for a potential conflict in East Asia. They included air defense exercises against an attack on the country's nuclear reactors. Japan doubled its defense spending last December to counter perceived threats from North Korea and China. 10 people have been charged with breaking Taiwan's National Security Act after allegedly spending over a year gathering military intelligence for China. This is Lu Zhixian. Once a coach for Taiwan's national Diabolo team, he and 9 others are now facing charges under the National Security Act. Starting in 2022, Lu and his crew were allegedly paid around $180,000 by an unknown Chinese source to spy on Taiwan's military.
经甲官侦查终结，于今日以违反国家安全法、为大陆地区发展组织等罪嫌，起诉鲁姓被告等10人。
Lu's team included 5 Taiwanese military personnel, 3 Taiwanese nationals, and 1 Chinese national. All have been charged with breaking Taiwan's National Security Act. But Chinese espionage is not a new phenomenon in Taiwan's military. Beijing uses spies to get a better understanding of how prepared Taiwan is for a conflict. And as China seeks to take control of Taiwan, it tries to recruit military personnel to learn more about potential weaknesses. Taiwan's military says that soldiers are vigilant in reporting suspected spy cases.
很多共谍案实际上是我们官兵检举了以后，然后我们跟检警去配合，那么做一个追查。
As Taiwan's military continues to weed out spy cases from within its ranks, it's a reminder that threats from China are sometimes closer than they seem. A fresh batch of immigration officers have graduated from a training program. Our reporter Laura Stewart takes a look at the skills needed to pass the exam.
Trained to the nines, these newly graduated immigration officers know what to do in an emergency. Thousands of people applied for Taiwan's immigration officer exam. Now these top 45 trainees are qualified to take on border security jobs. They've undergone a year of physical and professional training and have the skills to handle situations like containing and arresting a runaway at border control. Chen Chaoyi worked in ID verification at Taipei's Taoyuan Airport for 6 years before joining the program. She's come across forged and altered passports.
考过驾照，所以渐渐的觉得自己好像其实是很喜欢国境这个单位。长官跟我的同事的支持鼓励下，我才开始就是慢慢准备考试。
Officers need more than just physical skills. With more migrant workers coming to Taiwan from Southeast Asia, immigration officers are now expected to have relevant language abilities.
那我本身就是除了英文的专长跟我报考的印尼文之外，我自己之前也曾经在韩国交换过1年，所以我也精通韩文。
The Interior Ministry says officers that have the necessary physical and language attributes will strengthen Taiwan's border security.
在未来，各位在第一线执勤的时候所获取的经验，还有从我们 各位学长姐身上所去学习到的，甚至是未来进一步的科侦的能力，我想都是需要大家进一步来加强。
With this new class of qualified officers, the ministry hopes Taiwan's borders will remain safe and secure. Eason Chen and Laurel Stewart for TaiwanPlus.
Members of Taiwan's indigenous Bunun people are demanding that the remains of their ancestors held at a local university be returned. Tiffany Wong has this story.
Members of one of Taiwan's indigenous Bunun people gathered outside the gates of National Taiwan University to demand the return of their ancestors' remains, only to be blocked by police. For years, they've been demanding the remains be returned. Their ancestors' graves were excavated by the College of Medicine at Taiwan's most prestigious university for research purposes over 60 years ago. School authorities' response to the protest has raised concerns over freedom of speech.
我们认为此举不仅侵犯言论及集会的游行自由，更显现校方无法兼容异议，对此次侵害人权的作为公开道歉。
But the indigenous protesters say apologies are not enough, and that it's time their ancestors returned home.
我们的祖先63年了，流浪在台北。
Members of the Mayuan Bunun are demanding compensation and the return of their remains. In its response, the university said there was no legal basis for a payout. But activists say the university's focus on money misses the broader issue.
将原住民族塑成贪婪爱钱、成天要补助、补偿金的形象，我们斥责校方将遗骨返还问题概括成求偿问题。
The protests come just weeks after 4 warrior skulls taken from the Taiwan Indigenous group were returned from a university in Scotland. The skulls had been taken during a Japanese invasion of southern Taiwan and finally given their proper ceremonial rites over a century later. For now, the remains of the Bunun indigenous are kept in 43 boxes stored by the university, waiting for their own chance to return home. James Lin and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
An 150-year-old music ensemble in Taipei has been named an intangible cultural asset for helping pass on the traditions of Beiguan music. Laurel Stewart has this report.
Members of the Taipei Ling An Association are performing Beiguan. It's a traditional style of music using drums and gongs with reed and string instruments that first became popular in Taiwan in the 17th century, but today it's rare to hear. This group, however, has been around for 153 years, and it's teaching a new generation of musicians the special art form.
咱有位小学生，包括中学生，咱有邀请因来甲咱学这北管。咱每一个礼拜暗时的拜二，拢会踮咧社馆内底咧练习北管。透过这传承，互咱小朋友嘛知影咱有这个北管的传统艺术。
The group is now being recognized for its work. This plaque, which says Art Through the People, is being conferred by Taipei's Cultural Affairs Bureau. They've named the ensemble an intangible cultural asset.
如果没有人，没有各位灵安社的，还有各位乐师、各位大师这样的传承，这个意很难因为人而能够传递下去。150年了，真的很不容易。
The group hasn't always had the numbers and musicians they needed in the past, and they struggled to keep teaching the music. But through their persistence, the group now has more than 100 members, and with their new recognition, they hope the traditional sounds of Beiguan will continue to be heard for generations to come. Dolphin Chen and Laurel Stewart for TaiwanPlus.
South Korea's ruling party says it will ban the eating of dog meat. The government is introducing a bill this year to end the controversial tradition. Growing awareness of animal rights has led to bipartisan support for the change, and that means the bill is expected to pass. There are over 1,000 dog breeding farms still operating in the country, and the dish is still served at some 1,600 restaurants. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Jaime. Take care and see you next time.